Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Gopika Jeevan Smaranam,
Govinda Govinda,
Sadgurunath Maharaj ki
Jai.
Kalaye Sundarakaram Sadaika Priyadarshanam Ajnana Nashakam Devam Sadgurum Muralidharam Yasya Smaranamatren Jigvaya Vardhate Swayam Mahamantraha Tam Bhajami Muralidhara Deshikam Premamritam yo Murali Ninadehi Shri Krishna Rupena Puravavarshya Adyapi Soyam Muralidharakyo Pushnati Premna Bhuvanam Saharsham Murali Mandita Karakamalam Munijana Mohanam Vyatyasta Padam Vanamala Dharinam Prema Bhakta Mandala Nitya Kirtitam Shri Premika Varadam Ashrayeham Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Krishnaya Vasudevaya Haraye Paramatmane Pranata Klesha Nashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam Pranamo Dukkha Shamanaha Tam Namami Harim Param Shri Haraye Namaha, Shri Haraye Namaha, Shri Haraye Namaha. Gopika Jeevana Smaranam,
Govinda Govinda,
Sadgurunath Maharaj ki
Jai.
By the divine grace of Lord Shri Hari, our beloved Madhuri Sakhi Samet Premikavarda Thakurji, who are indeed Radha Krishna Murti, and by the immense kripa of our beloved Sadguru Maharaj, His Holiness Maharanyam Shri Shri Muralidhara Swamiji, I feel so blessed to be here in this Hindu temple, and I didn't get to see the entire assembly of the HATS program, I just missed it. But the little I saw, I know how much we are giving back to the community here and how organized and how disciplined things are happening. And I very truly feel privileged to be a part of, this temple here today to do a little smarana of a great Mahatma. And we always call discourses or katha like this as a satsanga. And satsanga, as the word itself means, the word sat means truth, and sang means being in association. So satsanga is being in the company of the truth. That's what is satsanga. And when we come to temples, when we chant the divine names of the Lord, when we chant the shlokas, whenever we remember Bhagavan, whenever we think of Bhagavan, we are in satsanga. Whenever we are in the company of great Mahatmas, great sadhus, we are in satsang. So here, we are in the presence of Bhagavan, we are within the temple, and we are also going to be doing a smarana of a great Mahan. So that's what defines this as a satsang. Mirabai, in one of her kirtans, she says that I will not go in search of satsang anywhere outside. Because when we choose satsang, she says we need to be really careful where we go. Just because we have a gathering and we have a lot of people coming there, crowd does not mean that it is a satsang. approval of, a lot of people. Swamiji would generally say, if you look at the world, crowd gathers for so many other things too. You have a soccer match, you have crowd. You have a movie star coming somewhere, you have crowd. You have some other game happening there, you have crowd. You have a party somewhere, you have crowd. So crowd is not something that defines a satsang. Not how many people come that really matters, but what we discuss there. And how is our mind elevated to some higher things when we come to the company. That's what matters. Because Mirabai says, I'll choose rather to stay in my own house where I have a little puja room and I have my Krishna with me and I'll sit in front of him, just there. अपने मंदिर में बैठ बैठ कर गीता भागवत वाचूंगी हरि गुण गावत नाचूंगी मैं प्रभु गुण गावत नाचूंगी अपने मंदिर में बैठ बैठ कर गीता भागवत वाचूंगी. She says, if I want to have satsang, if I want to be in the company of Bhagavan, I'll stay wherever I am. I'll open Bhagavad Gita. And who speaks there? Bhagavan Uvacha. Bhagavan is talking there. And then if I want to talk with other bhaktas, I'll open Bhagavatam. And what great saints I find there? Dhruva Uvacha, Prahlada Uvacha, Ambarisha Uvacha, Gopya Uchuhu. And Mirabai says, where else can you find sadhus like this? Of this caliber, like Dhruva, like Prahlada, like Ambarisha, people like that. Why? She says, if we go to a satsang, how it should be? If we already have, say, 1% of bhakti, Swamiji would say this very beautifully. Say we have 1% of bhakti, that's a lot actually for a common man. And even if we have 1% of bhakti, if we go to a satsang, when we come out of it, we should have at least 1.1% of bhakti. It should have increased at least to that level. And Swami should go on to say, even if it is not increased to 1.1 or 1.2, it should not become 0.9 or 0.8. The entire purpose of satsang will be defeated if we lose the little shraddha and the little bhakti we have. Because the nature of our mind is to go towards the world. That's how it is. It's a very common thing we can see. See, when you have little children, like the ones we find here, but not these maybe, these are different because they are here. Right? But commonly in the world, if you see children, we find that they are able to grasp and understand and imbibe things of the world very quickly. All they have to do is be with their friends for a few moments and then they'll know every other, popular serial or popular characters or the songs or the movies or, the little games that they play. They catch on everything very quickly. And you don't even need to coax them to learn those things. Right? You don't have to actually call your child and say, if you don't play this game, I'm really gonna, not give you ice cream today. You don't have to do it. Kids, they'll say, don't give me any food, I'll play. I don't care about anything. That's how naturally kids like the things of the world, right? But if you have to bring them to HATS class, if you have to teach them, some slokas, sometimes it's not easy, right? They don't learn it naturally. We have to teach them, and even that, sometimes we need to coax them. And if you have to make them repeat the shloka, what they have learned, you really have to bribe them. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And that's how it is. Things of the world, we can see that easily in the children, but it's true for elders too. We easily grasp onto things that are worldly, and it's very tough for us to, hold on to something that's very divine. That's how it's natural, and it is natural. But Swamiji would give a beautiful example. See, the nature of water is always to flow from a higher level to a lower level, right? That's how it is. But if we want to move the water from a lower level to higher level, we need to apply some motor. You need to have a motor, some external force to push it up. is it not? And Swamiji would say, satsang is that motor which actually drives our mind to something higher, to the spiritual things, against the flow of mind. It takes us to some higher things. That's the beauty of it. When we come to a satsang, it's not that we learn anything new. It's not that we get to hear something that we have never heard before. We actually hear the same things again and again and again. See, many times we have Bhagavad Katha, many times we have Ramayana Katha, and Ramayana is something even kids here will know. You know, who is Rama, who is Sita, what happened in their life is something everyone knows. But why do we still have the same kathas again and again? You know, the difference is, it may be the same thing, but what it does is, it actually helps us see the common things of life in a different light. That's what satsang does. For a very simple example, you know, for us to understand that, there are many things that we see day in and day out in our life. And there are many things that we take for granted. Like, you know, Swamiji would say, none of us, I'm very sure about this, none of us have ever, you know, even once in our lifetime, just before we sleep, you know, tell me if anyone of you have ever done this. I don't know, because I've never done it. Like just before we go to sleep, close your eyes, and have you ever prayed that let there be sun tomorrow? Have you ever done that? Let the sun rise tomorrow. Or have you ever prayed that, you know, let there be oxygen in the air tomorrow? Have you ever done that? Or while I'm sleeping, let my heart beat, let my lungs work. We don't do these prayers, right? But if we stop for a moment and think, are these not miracles in itself? Every day the sun comes up and, you know, we have no control over it's coming or not coming up. Absolutely. And we breathe. And for our breathing, we need this oxygen, and it's there, all over. Swamiji would always say that Bhagavan is so compassionate that things that we really need for our life, for our living, Bhagavan has given us for free. You know, air, water, and the basic food like in the trees, the fruits, if you can just eat them, we have everything for free. But unfortunately, man bottles them and, you know, he's even selling that. That's how we are. And we realize this more when we lose something that we already have. Like, you know, in a very lighter vein, I would always say this. When I have a problem in my teeth, you know, we go to a dentist, and there are days when they have to just pull out. And for pulling out my teeth, they ask for, like in India, you know, and doing a bit of root canal and all that, they ask 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 rupees. You know, that's the charge they give if you go to a dentist. And whenever I do that, I always come back, you know, I look at Bhagavan and I say, you gave me 32 of them for free. Right? And one thing goes wrong, I have to spend so much on it. But that's it. All that's really needed for our life, Bhagavan is giving us for free. That shows us compassion. But we see this every day. We see sunrise every day. We see that the ocean stays within the border. We watch this every day. You go to beach because you're sure tsunami is not something that happens every day. Right? If you have a fear that, you know, you can have tsunami anytime, nobody will dare to go to a beach or try to, you know, take a boat in a lake. We won't do that. Why? Because we are quite confident that tsunami is an anomaly. It's not something that happens every day. Right? And the ocean staying there is what happens every day. Now if you look at all this, just the way our body functions, you know, Swamiji would say, don't look for miracles anywhere outside. Look within your body. Everything about our body is a miracle. Right? We eat. Can you digest? Do you actually physically, consciously, you know, digest? No. It just happens. And that's why when it does not happen, you have a problem. And you can't easily correct it. You can't, you know, say, I'm going to eat now and I'm going to digest it later. You know, I'm going to wait for some. We can't do anything like that. You know, it's all automated within us. And so beautifully automated that even a bit of that goes wrong somewhere, we have no clue how to handle it. That's how it is. So that's what we say satsang actually does. You know, these are things that we see commonly, but when we come to a satsang, when we listen to these kathas, we start seeing the same things a bit differently. We become conscious, we become aware of all that's happening around us and about the purpose of our existence. That's what satsang does to us. And that's what we see, that there are many things. For us, specifically people who belong to Sanatana Dharma, I'm sure that it's a part of everyone's experience here, that somewhere, just like these children who have been introduced to, so many beautiful things at this young age, we were also introduced to many things when we were young. I remember when back in India, when I was being brought up in some part of Chennai, as a practice, my father used to take me to temples every day. And I tell you honestly, it didn't mean anything to me then. Going to temples or, the slokas that my mother taught me, they didn't mean anything to me, but it was nice because if I learned something really well, if my parents' friends come, my mother would, display it and she'll say, she knows the shloka. And I like to tell that in front of them. So that way I love learning shlokas, just to show the world that, see, my memory is like too good. So that was the intention of learning shlokas when I was young. And I used to go to temples because my father did it and he took me along, and just like brushing our teeth or having our bath, going to temple was just a part of our life. It was just a habit. And all of us are introduced to some great spiritual things at a very early part of our life, in some way or the other. The greatest spiritual practice for this Kali Yuga, they say, the scriptures claim as chanting the divine names of Bhagavan. Nama Sankirtan is the Kali Yuga Dharma, right? So for Kali Yuga, for this Iron Age, the simplest and the most effective practice is to chant the names of Bhagavan. But if you look at it, we all do it. We all chant Bhagavan's names in some form or the other. Because more often than not, our own friends are named after, some lord. In India at least, I've seen this. Even if you're an atheist, even if you're a complete non-believer. So, in India, even if you're a non-believer, you would have chanted the divine name sometime in your life. Because even if you're a non-believer, you have a friend who's called Krishna. You'll have someone who's called Rama. And you'll have an enemy who's called Shiva, something. And if there are enemies, we chant their name extra, usually. They are our friends because we can't forgive them for things and we start thinking of them much more. That's how it is. And our scriptures claim that even that is enough, right? But the beauty is, that's how it is, that we actually know so much that would give us spiritual benefit, but we don't know that is how great it is. We don't recognize, we don't realize how great these simple things are and how they are helping us. In the life of Tulsidas Maharaj, who has written this beautiful Ramcharitmanas, before he composed that Ramayana, if you turn back and look at his life, it is something that each one of us can relate to. His beginning, how he was born and how he was brought up, and what kind of life he was leading. It's something that all of us can relate to, something that's much concerned with what I spoke just now. He was born in a very, very pious family. His father, called Atma Rama, was a Rama Bhakta. See, it helps our kids when the parents are already devout. Like we had a little discussion yesterday in a group of, a place where we had the children come together with the parents, and we did convey the message there too. If we have parents who are already spiritual and religious, the child will just follow. But if we as parents do not follow anything, but we expect the children to do that doesn't work. We don't go to temples, we don't light a lamp, but we want the children to do that won't work. So it's a great advantage if we are born in such a family which is naturally, having the spiritual inclination and religious inclination and things like that. So, Tulsidas ji was born in such a family. His father Atmaram ji was a great Rama Bhakta. He was actually the Asthana Pauranika for the king of Varanasi at that time. Asthana Pauranika is someone who actually goes to the king, and whenever the king calls, he would actually go and he'll start. He'll talk about Ramayana or Bhagavata or Mahabharata. So he was the storyteller. It's like the Pauranikas are the official storytellers. So he would do that. And back at home, he would always be doing Ramanama Japa. And he had a very pious and conducive wife too. She was also very devoted to Rama Puja and all that. And when she was pregnant with Tulsidas ji, she always, as a habit, she would always do Tulsi Puja. On that day, when she was doing the Tulsi Puja, she suddenly had this labor pain and she gave birth to the child right under the Tulsi tree. And they say that's why he was named as Tulsi Das. And there's another version where they say that as soon as he was born, he was mumbling something, it seems. His lips were moving, and his father, Rama Bhakta that he was, when he saw the lip of the child moving like that, he felt that the child was chanting Rama, 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 Rama. So he called him Ram Bola. So there was another name that he got, Ram Bola. But we'll maintain Tulsidas because we'll understand it better. And he was born in that family, and as he grew up, his father taught him all the scriptures. He knew everything. He taught him Ramayana, he taught him Mahabharata, he taught him Bhagavata, because he has to be his, the next hire for doing this. So after him, he has to take over being the Pauranika. He taught him everything, and Tulsidas ji grew in such an environment where at a very young age, he was introduced to everything, all that you can think of. That's how he was. And as he grew up, he got married. His father got him married to a very beautiful lady called Ratnamani. And they led a happy life. And as time passed on, his father and his mother, they reached the feet of Bhagwan. And Tulsidas ji was left with his wife. And Tulsidas ji took over the job that his father had been doing. He went to the king now, and he was the one who was telling the stories of Ramayana to the king, and he was brilliant in it. He was a great orator. He could speak impressively, his storytelling capabilities were excellent, and the king was doubly happy. He felt that he was even better than his own father. That's how he felt. And the king used to call him very often. One day it so happened that the king had this desire to go on a pilgrimage. He wanted to go all around India and visit the important holy spots in India. And so he called Tulsidas ji and he said, I desire to see many spots like this, many pilgrim spots like this. Kshetra Yatra is what I want to do. But I don't want to go alone. I don't want to go with just my ministers. I want to go with you. And Swamiji would say that whenever we undertake a pilgrimage, we should not plan for it as if we are planning for a tour or a picnic. Some people tend to do that. Like we have to go to Vrindavan, Dwaraka, and we have all this. When I go to India, I want to cover all this place. And the first thing we see is, which hotel is really comfortable and where can I eat. These are the things that we are generally bothered about. Swamiji would say when you go for a pilgrimage, you should not be planning for that. You should go with a Mahatma who knows about that place. So when you go there, you can actually connect to the place at that level where you know how if you go to Pandharpur, you should be looking at this is Namdevji's house. This is where Tukaram Baba stayed. This is where Bhagwan played with Janabai. This was the kitchen in which Panduranga came and he helped Janabai cook food for the rest of the family. And when you go there and when you have someone to tell you the story of Namdev, tell you the story of Tukaram Baba, tell you the story of Janabai, and you see the things there, it's then that the pilgrimage actually serves the purpose. Right? Not otherwise. So here this king, he somehow seemed to know that. So he called Tulsidas ji and he said, I want you to come so that you can tell me the stories. Like whatever is the Sthala Purana, the Sthala Mahatmya, and I would love it. Tulsidas ji wanted to go because he cannot say no to his king. He was his employee after all. So he had to go. But he did not want to go at that time because going with the king would mean that he has to leave his wife behind, alone. And he did not want to do that. Mainly because those were the days when there was Muslim invasion in India, right? And it was quite gory. And northern part of India was the most affected, and the southern India was kind of more protected because the northern India, they took all the impact, and the southern part is safe. That's why even today, if you go to India, in South India, in Tamil Nadu, you still have all the temples intact, and you can see the architecture, the greatness of our, the architecture there. You can see all that. But in North India, we can hardly see the temples now. In Vrindavan, if you go, every street will be like a gully. Like, very, very narrow streets. And when you go there and people ask I'll take you to temple, and you get in there, when you go in, you'll actually see a little door. It will be like, only 5 feet or something. The height will be very less. You have to bend yourself to get in. And when you look from outside, nothing will be seen. It will be a flat facade, and there will be just a door. But once you enter inside, if you go in, you'll have a big mandir. From outside, you'll have no clue that there can be such a big mandir inside. That's how it is, because when they had an invasion like that, they made the streets narrow so that the armies cannot enter. And they did not show the temple out for the fear of it being destroyed. So that's how it was. And Tulsidas Ji was very worried to leave his wife behind, because if something like that happens, if the Muslims suddenly attack Varanasi in his absence, she may be carried away. Those were the days when they would just carry away women like that and they'll get married. So he didn't want that to happen, and he didn't want to leave. So he looked at the king and he said, Maharaj, you know what? We'll go in another 2 weeks. I have some important job to do. So if you can wait for 2 weeks, we can go after that. The king said, okay, whatever you say, we'll wait. And after 2 weeks, the king again asked, Tulsidas, can we go this week? And he said, just give me 2 more weeks, and I'm sure I'll be done with all my work. He was stalling. He was trying his best to somehow push off and hoping that the king would get some other important thing to do and he would forget this pilgrimage altogether. That was his hope. And finally, after another 2 weeks, the king kind of knew that, he was not going to come. So he said, Tulsidas, I can't wait anymore. Next week, we are leaving. It's an order. You have no choice. Whatever you have to do, finish it up this week. That's it, he said. And when Tulsidas got home, he was so depressed and so sad. Ratnavali asked him, so why are you so sad? And he said, he wants to answer that. And he said, I don't want to leave you behind. And I have to go because the king wants me to go on a pilgrimage. But I don't know how long it will take. And I'm frightened to leave you. I can't take you along because the queen is not coming. And I'll be with the king and I can't really, take care of you. So that's going to be difficult also. So I have to leave you behind. But Ratnavali, I'll tell you something. You know what? Stay inside the house for the entire month. I think I should be back within a month. And just stay inside the house. I will get all that you need for 1 month. Whatever food or cereal or whatever you want, I'll just get vegetables. I will store everything. And you can just be inside the house. I'll tell the neighbors that I'm leaving you. And they will keep an eye on you. But promise me, don't step out of the house. Come what may, please just don't step out of the house. So he said that, just see to it that you don't step out of the house, and I'm sure the rest will be taken care. And Ratnavali said, don't worry about me, I'll be safe. And please enjoy your tour with Maharaj and be happy. And just as he promised, he made arrangements for 1 month for Ratnavali. And then he said, never step out of the house, it's an order. And he spoke to his neighbors and he said, please keep an eye on her. See to it that she never goes out, anything she needs. The neighbor's uncle, you can go and get it for her. And he arranged everything. And with a heavy heart, he leaves with the king. And they go on the tour. And usually those were the days when transportation was not really good. Like today, if you plan for a trip, you can book your tickets ahead and it's flight or train or bus or whatever. exactly, the end date, the beginning date, and the end date, and all that. But those were the days when people had to walk. And maybe since he was a king, they had some palanquins and some carts that were going on. But all said and done, you could not plan your trip to that level. So though they had planned for coming back by a month, it was almost 2 months when Tulsidas ji returned. And when he came back, one day, it was almost 6 in the evening when he was coming back, he came to his house straight, wanting to see Ratnavali because he was very attached to her, and he had missed her for 2 months, and he was also worried, what's happened to her in the 2 months and all that. So he came running to her, and when he came to the house, to his utter shock, the house was locked. And for a moment his heart skipped a beat. He just went to the neighbors and said, how come Ratnavali is not in? How was the house locked? And they said, oh, Tulsidas ji, you're back. You know what? Till today morning she was here. Just in the afternoon, somebody came. We didn't see who it was. Someone came, but she just came running to us and she said, my father is really ill, so I have to go immediately to look after him. So please, if my husband comes, give him the key. I don't know, he hasn't been coming for 2 months now, so I don't know when he's going to come. I can't wait till he comes because I don't know what will happen to my father by then. So please have this key and tell him that I've gone to my father's place. And the moment the neighbor said that, Tulsidas ji's imagination took flight. He thought, my God, I told her so many times not to step out of the house. How do we know that someone has not cheated her? Someone who had been observing that, her husband is not here. Maybe he came out one day and he said, are you this person's daughter? He's ill, do you want to come? And maybe he just carried her away. He said, when did she go? She left in the afternoon. He said, you know what, have this key with you. I'm not going to the house right now. He wanted to be sure, he wanted to be assured that Ratnavali was indeed at her father's place. And he wanted to do that right away. He said, I'm just going there. I'm going to see if she's really reached there safely. And I'll also see if her father is okay. He said that and he left. It was almost 7, 8 o'clock when he left. And it was raining cats and dogs. It was pouring so much that the Ganges, Ganga, was flooding. And to reach Ratnavali's father's house, he would have to cross the Ganga. And he looked around for the boatmen there and he asked, can one of you please, it's very urgent and desperate, I can't wait here, can you please somehow row me across to the other shore? They looked at him and said, are you out of your mind? Can't you see that the river is flooding? We can't dare to take the boat right now, we won't survive. So you're asking us to commit suicide. We won't do that, sorry. They said that. And Tulsidas ji, when he saw nobody was coming, he was in such panic. He was like so attached to Ratnavali that he just had to know right away that she's there. That he didn't think, he didn't use his brains, he didn't know what he was doing. He jumped into the river and he started swimming. See, trying to swim in the Ganges when it is calm itself is quite dangerous. And it's flooding now and he was not thinking, he started swimming and he was losing his energy, he was becoming very tired. He would have drowned. Suddenly he caught hold of something like a log that he found. He climbed on it and he started rowing with his hands and in spite of being so tired after the travel and with this rain pouring down on him and the river flooding, still his thoughts were so much on Ratnavali. He was so desperate to see her that none of these mattered. And somehow he reached the other shore and by the time he crossed the Ganges, it was 11:30 in the night. It was still raining. He reached the house of his wife's father and he had to walk through the village to get there. It was almost 12:30 in the night by the time he reached the house. And he tried knocking, but nobody could hear because of the downpour. He could not wait. He had to know then. He looked around, he saw something like a rope was hanging from a tree. He caught hold of it and he jumped inside. Those were the days when houses had a little veranda kind of thing where you can enter the house. He jumped through the roof into the house and third he landed. When he did that, Ratnavali was sleeping nearby. She just woke up and she was about to scream when she saw the silhouette and she found it was Tulsidas Ji. She asked, how come you are here? And he said, when he saw Ratnavali safe there, he was immensely relieved. At the same time, he was extremely angry. He looked at her and said, how dare did you step out of the house? How many times did I tell you not to go? Do you know how worried I was? When I came back, I saw the house locked. Do you know what went through me? Do you know what I thought? I thought that someone had come and they just called you and you just went off. And how would I know who to ask? She said, calm down. My father was ill. I had been inside the house for 2 months. I didn't even step out. But my father was ill and I had to come and see him. But she said, but how do I know who came and called you? What if someone had cheated you? She said, come on. It was my brother who came and he told me so I can trust my brother. And the neighbors did not know. Of course, they don't know my brother. And I was not in a mood to introduce my brother and have a chit-chat there before I left. I was worried for my father. So I just left. Still, he was not convinced. He said, whatever it is, Ratnavali, you should not have done it. What if something had happened to you? What if, someone had carried, I can't live. He said that. Ratnavali smiled. And she said, so you think that you are the one who is protecting me. Is it not? You go to the king and you sit on a stage like this with a mic and you tell the world that, depend on Rama, pray to Rama, and you tell Ramayana and you say, Apatam, Apahartaram, Dataram, Sarvasampadam, Lokabhiramam, Sriramam, Bhuyo Bhuyo Namamyaham. You tell that, Ramachandra Prabhu will save you from everything. He will protect you. Just trust him. So you tell that all. It's only for, it's called Mic Upadesha. Such things will come only when a mic is in front of them. Not otherwise. She said, is it like that? Like if you see people, you give advice, but you don't mean one word of it. Raghavo rakshati tvancha mamami ashrita vatsalaha apannanam rakshanartam priyate yena vaidhanu. You have told so many times that Bhagavan Ramachandra Prabhu has the bow in his hand to protect us, his devotees. Don't you believe in those words? Don't you believe in the advice you give? Don't you believe that Rama Nama will save us? You think you should be saving me? She says, the day I entered your house after I got married, you know what pressure I got? Your father, the moment I came, he initiated me in Rama Nama. And he told me, child, this Nama will give you everything in this life and even after your life. That's the beauty of this Bhagavan Nama. And he talked about the glory of Nama to me and I have faith in it. I had absolute faith in it. And that's why even today I'll tell you. She says, even today I'll tell you how you came. You are so desperate to see me, is it not? But let me just tell you, how do you think you came? It is raining so much. So the river Ganga must have been flooding. How did you cross the river? No boatman would have come. He said, yes, nobody came. So how did you cross? I swam across. But you could not have, swim through away. So did you get something else? Yes. I caught hold of a log and I climbed on it and I was rowing. She said, do you know what? The one that you caught hold on to, that was not a log. It was a corpse. Because even today they have the practice of throwing the dead bodies into, Ganga. And she said that you were lying on a corpse and you were swimming. That's what you were doing. And when you came here, how did you jump inside? There was a rope. She said, that's not a rope, I'll show you. She took him outside and there was a cobra that was hanging down. He had caught hold of the snake to jump in. She looked at him and she said, you were so desperate to see me that you did not even realize that you were on a corpse, that you were catching hold of a snake to jump in. That's how you were. And she says, Mamsapindam imam matva bhogyameva nishantare vismritya rama karunyam yaitra bhagato siva. She says, just to see me, because of the love that you have for me, you did not think, you took such great risks that you swam across the flooding Ganga on a corpse, you caught hold of a snake, you did all this. You know what? If you had 0.0001% of this love that you have for me, for Bhagavan, Bhagavan would be in front of you right now. When she said that, she became the guru of Tulsidas Ji. Because he had been telling all these things so many days. He knew all this so many, right from the day he was born, he was being tutored in this line of talking about Bhagavan and, talking how great he was and all that. But he did not have conviction on his own. He didn't know that. He didn't even realize that he was not having that conviction. Today when she said that, it was as if, someone slapped him and it made such a change. He did not wait for another night, another day. He stepped out of the house then and there. He left Kashi. He went to Ayodhya. Then he went to Chitrakoot. Then he went to Vrindavan. And wherever he went, he just kept chanting Rama Nama. He didn't do any other sadhana. He just kept chanting Rama, 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 Rama. And with that power of Bhagavan Nama, he had darshan of Bhagavan. I say this because I say how closely related we are to Tulsidas Ji in that sense. Because just like him, we also know all these things right from our young age. We have been listening about the greatness of Nama, of the divine names, of Rama and Krishna and all that. But how serious are we about it? What kind of conviction do we have? Is it not? But after he understood that, he composes this Ramcharitmanas, and very interestingly, Ramcharitmanas was originally composed by Tulsidas Ji in Sanskrit. Just like Valmiki Ramayana, Ramcharitmanas is also, was originally in Sanskrit. It seems he came back to Kashi and he had his ashram, and every day he had his desire to sing Rama, the story of Rama, and every day early in the morning he would sit and he would do Ramanama Japa. Right from 3 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock in the afternoon, he would be doing Ramanama Japa. And after 12 o'clock, he would write Ramayana Shlokas. He would compose Ramayana Shlokas in Sanskrit all through the evening. And night he would sleep. Next day morning, the first day he wrote like that. Next day morning he wakes up, he sees the book is there, the pen is there, the shlokas are missing. And he thought, maybe I thought I wrote and maybe I didn't write. And he wrote all the shlokas again. And he finished till a particular part and he closed his book and he went to sleep. Next day morning he wakes up, shlokas are missing. This happened for one whole week. Then he realized, obviously I can't be, so senile or I can't lose my memory so easily. I did write. How is it that we have a thief who does not steal anything else? He seems to have the knack of just stealing the shlokas from the book. He thought, let me see who's doing this. This is happening only in the night, so let me see who's doing this. So that night he decided I won't sleep. He sat down and he was chanting Ramanama, but he didn't close his eyes. He's very intelligent. He didn't close his eyes. With his eyes open, he was chanting Rama, 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 Rama. 12 o'clock midnight, he saw Kashi Vishwanatha, Lord Shiva of Kashi. He came, he gave darshan. He was not looking at Tulsidas Ji. He went straight to the place where he had written the shlokas. He opened it, he read it. He took a eraser, he erased all the shlokas. And Tulsidas Ji came to him, he did namaskar and he said, Prabhuji, you don't like my shlokas? You don't like Ramayana? Why are you erasing them off? And Shivji told him that there are so many of them who have written Ramayana in Sanskrit, right? But not all of them understand Sanskrit. So Shivji said, write Ramayana in such a language that people can understand by merely reading it. Chakara Rashtra Bhashayam Shankarasya Anushasanat Srimad Ramayanam Karyam Madhuram Vaishnavottamam. He says, compose this in Rashtra Bhasha in Hindi. That's why Tulsidas Ji composed Ramayana in Hindi and this beautiful Ramcharitmanas. If you look at it, you know that he knows every other scripture. Nana Purana Itihasa. He says that. In his own Tulsi Ramayana, he says, Nana Purana Itihasa Nigamagama Sammatam Yat. He says, I have taken the Charitra I composed this Ramcharitmanas not just from Valmiki Ramayana. Valmiki Ramayana is my inspiration, but I have taken the aspects, the best aspects of all the Puranas, of all the Vedas, of all the Upanishads. The truths from everything is there in it. And in that, he says the essence of this entire Ramayana, this essence of spirituality lies in Ramanama. He says that. And it's beautiful. If you read Ramcharitmanas, in the very beginning, he talks about this glory of this Ramanam because now he can talk with conviction. Because now it is his experience. It's not what he heard, it's not what he learned, but it's what he knows. It makes a big difference. In that he says, Maha mantra joy japat maheshu Kashi mukti hetu upadeshu Mahima jasu jani dhan rao Prathama pujiyat naam prabhav Sahas naam sam sunishivvani Jatje piyasang bhavani Maha mantra joy japat maheshu. She says there is one deity, only one deity who is called Devokadev Mahadev. Is it not? Only one deity has that name. That Mahadev, Shivaji, he continuously chants Maha Mantra Joy Japatu Maheshu. He continuously chants Ramanama. And that is what makes Kashi Mukti Hetu Upadeshu. In our scriptures it says that whoever dies in Kasi, in Varanasi, they attain Brahman. They attain liberation. It's a moksha sadhana. Just dying in Kashi will give us moksha. And Krishnaji says, you know why? Because Shivaji chants Ramanama there, and whenever someone dies in Varanasi, Shivaji personally takes that jiva and puts it on his lap, and he chants Rama, Rama, Rama in the right ear of the jiva. And that this is there in Kashi's Talapurana, in Varanasi's Talapurana, in Ramakrishna Paramahamsaji's life. The great saint who lived in Dakshineshwar, sometimes we have to introduce him as Vivekanandaji's Guru. People know Swami Vivekananda much better than Ramakrishna Paramahamsaji. So Swami Vivekananda's Guru, Ramakrishna Paramahamsaji, he had gone to a tour, a pilgrimage to Kashi once. And there when he was on the boat in Manikarnika Ghat, in the Ganges, in that particular ghat, suddenly he went into trance. And when he came out of it, he said, I had a vision where I saw Shivaji actually take the jiva, put that on his lap and chant Ramanama in the ears. So the Sthala Puranas are not made up. No, we don't have the eye to see it, but Mahatmas can see it. And he says, Kashi Mukti Hetu Upadeshu. That's how Kashi becomes a Mukti Sthala. Because Shivji chants Ramanama there. Mahima jasu jani dhanrao Prathama pujiyat naam prabhav. See, every time we do puja of Ganapati before doing puja of anybody else. Right? That's why, in every temple we go to Ganapati first and then only we go to the other deities. That's how it is. And even if you do Lakshmi puja, even if you do Kuber puja, you do whatever puja, you'll have to start with Ganapati puja. And Goswamiji says, you know how he got that status of being the one to be worshipped first? It seems this is a very famous story, and it's a different version that we get in Padma Purana, from which Goswamiji has taken. In that it says that there was this competition about who should be worshipped first, and between Ganapati ji and his brother Subramaniam. And the parents decided that whoever goes around the world comes first will get it, will get the position. And when our Subramanian, he has the peacock as his vahana, and on his vehicle he climbed up, he was going around the world. But it says, Padma Purana says, you know what Ganapati ji did? He wrote Rama on the floor and he went around it. And he won the competition, it seems. It does not even say he went around the barrels. It says he actually just wrote Ramanama and he went around that Ramanama, and that's how he became Prathama Pujiyat Nama Prabhavu. It was that Ramanama which gave him this position. That's how it says. And when the father chants and the son chants, how can the mother be any different? He says, Sahasa Nama Samashuni Suni Shivavani. This also comes in Padma Purana. It seems one day, Shivji, when he was sitting for dinner, he called Parvati Devi and he said, why don't you have food with me? She said, no, I have a discipline. And he said, what? She said, every day I chant Vishnu Sahasranama. So without chanting Vishnu Sahasranama, I don't have my food. He said, that's it, right? No, but it will take 20 minutes if we chant properly. And if we try doing it mentally, sometimes it will take even 1 hour because we'll be doing the same thing again and again, going in loops, is it not? So she said, no, it will take time, so don't wait for me. He said, no, I'll tell you, there's a shortcut for it. He said, really, what? Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. He says, just say Shri Rama Rama Rama. That's enough. And he does not say, if you chant one Rama Nama, it is equal to 1,000 Namas. He says, Sahasranama Samasuni Shivavani. 1,000 names are equivalent to one Rama Nama. I don't know if you understand this difference, but you can't compare the reverse. He says, actually, if you have 1,000 Namas, and you chant one Rama Nama, that's like more than chanting those 1,000 Namas. That's how great it is. The moment he said that, she said, Japi Jai Priya Bhavani. With her husband, she chanted Rama 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 and she had food with her husband that day, it seems. So that's how we are introduced. And Mahan Swamiji would say, Shivji was so much in love with the Ramana that even when he was giving the Upadesha to Bhavani, to Parvati Devi, he did not want to miss the chanting. Shri Rama 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 Iti. He says Rame, Rame, Mano Rame. He wants to use the word Rama Rama as much as possible. Rame, Rame, Mano Rame. Then when he says Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. That's how he loves Ramana. And he says everybody who has chanted this Ramana, this Bhagavan Nam, they have attained what they wanted. That's the beauty of he talks about Dhruvasa Villani Jape Hari Nam. Dhruva chanted Bhagavan Nama and he sat, he got the position that he wanted, he got Bhagavan also. Prahlada, he chanted Bhagavan Nama and it was the Narayan Nama that saved him from everything. And today we say that he is the Bhakta, the role model for the rest of them. Everybody, he quotes everyone. In one of these beautiful bhajans, it says, what it cannot do, this Bhagavan Nama. It can, whatever our prayers, be it worldly, be it spiritual, this Bhagavan Nama can grant us. And it can change the situation in which we are put in. See, we are all bound by our karma, is it not? But our scriptures say that karma is what throws you in a situation. But the outcome of the situation can be changed if you pray to Bhagavan. Bhagavan does not interfere in all our karmas. But if you want him to interfere in some part, he would come and protect us. That's why Swamiji would say, see, in Mahabharata, Draupadi was pulled to the port like that. And nobody could save her. She had 5 husbands who were there. And she had these great warriors like Bhishmacharya, Kripacharya, Vidura, everybody, Dronacharya, everybody sitting there. Not one of them is speaking for her, not one of them is there to support her. She is calling out for dharma. That's not working. Swamiji would say that is, what the fate does. It brings you to the crossroads. And sometimes we forget that there are things that are beyond us and she tries calling help everywhere. It doesn't happen. Dushasana is like trying to disrobe her and she's holding on with her hands, with her teeth. And finally she realizes there are moments, like we also do sometimes, that there are things beyond us. At that time, she shouts, Govinda, Drupadi ki laaj udariya, jab Krishna Krishna pukariya, Brahmanand cheer padariya, tumhe yaad ho, ke na yaad ho, jo naam ka pratap hai, tumhe yaad ho, ke na yaad ho, Gajraj pe vipda padi, man mein japa jo hari hari, ग्रह मार के मुक्ति करी, तुम्हें याद हो के न याद हो, जो नाम का प्रताप है, तुम्हें याद हो के न याद हो. द्रुपदी की लाज उदारिया जब कृष्ण कृष्ण पुकारिया. That Bhagavan Nama, the instant she chanted, Mahatmas say that even Krishna did not commit sins. The moment she chanted the divine name, the divine name protected her. That's the power of Bhagavan Nama. And Goswami Ji says, everyone, even if you're the worst sinner like Ajamila, Apit Ajamila Gaj Ganikau, Bhaye Mukti Harinam Prabhav. He says, even someone like Ajamila, who is the greatest sinner, there is a story in Padma Purana about a lady who was a dasi called Jivantika. She's a Ganika. She was a Jivanti. Her name was Jivanti and she was a Ganika. Ganika means, somebody like a call girl. That's how she was. And she was being visited by a regular paramour called Rama. And just to please him, because he was really rich and he would give her a lot of money, she bought a parrot and she taught the parrot to say Rama, Rama, Rama. So whenever this man comes, she'll prod it and the parrot will call Rama, 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 and he'll be very happy. And as in the case of any dasi, when she started growing old, nobody came to her. But this parrot was in a cage with her, and a day came when she was so ill, she was almost in a deathbed. She couldn't take care of herself, she couldn't take care of the parrot anymore. She was dying. She was dying out of illness, and the parrot was dying out of, the lack of food and care. And still it was there in the cage, but by habit, it was so trained to say Rama, 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 that while dying, the parrot was chanting Rama, 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 and Jivanti heard it, and though she was a great sinner, after her death, Ramadutas came and took her to Saketa Nagari. That's what, Padma Purana says. It goes to say that if you chant Rama Nama, if you chant Bhagavan Nama, anywhere we want. The beauty of Bhagavan's names is, there are no rules whatsoever. We can chant anytime, anywhere, anybody can, spirituality cannot become easier than this. That's the beauty of it. We can chant it anywhere, anytime. See, we can't do puja wherever we want. Is it not? We can't. Can you sit inside your toilet and do puja? We don't do that. You have a puja room where we do that. So that's a specific thing we do. And some shlokas, we don't chant wherever we want. We have to be clean to do that. But Bhagavan Nama alone has no rules. We can chant it anywhere. You can chant before having your bath, after having your bath, before even brushing our teeth. We can chant Bhagavan Nama. That's the beauty of it. Kala Vela Nama Ucharita Nahi Dohu Pakshapahi Uddharati Rama Krishna Nama Sarvadosha Harana Jada Jivatarana Harim Eka. He says Kala Vela Nama Ucharita Nahi. We can chant anywhere, anybody can chant anytime. That's how simple this Bhagavan Nama is. And he says, how great this Rama Nama is? Tulsidas ji says, Ramana Sakahi Nama Guna Gai. Kaho kahan lagi Nama Badai. Ramana Sakahi Nama Guna Gai. He says that the power of the divine names is such that even Rama himself does not know or he cannot speak of its greatness. He says that this is the essence of the entire Ramayana. In that, and Valmiki ji also says that in Ramayana, he says, Rama, Rama, Rama iti. The very purpose of Rama Avatar was for people to chant Rama, Rama, Rama. That's it, and nothing else. And that's how we all know this Bhagavan Nama always. But what we don't know is how powerful it is. What we don't realize is how simple, yet how effective, and how great it is. And Mahatmas like Tulsidas ji, Mahatmas like Meerabai, like Tyagaraja Swamigal, like all the Pandharpur Bhaktas, all the sadhus in Kali Yuga, they come down, they incarnate. It's Bhagavan who comes down like that, and they incarnate out here to show us this path, the most simplest path of chanting the divine names of Bhagavan. It's a only problem with Bhagavan Nama is it is too simple, so it's not attractive. See, if we call people and say you're going to have a yoga class and I'll teach you meditation for 1 hour, I'll tell you we have a lot of enrollments. But if we tell them that we're going to chant Hare Rama Mahamantra for 1 hour, except me, nobody will be here. Maybe even I'll be here only because I arranged it, not otherwise. That's how it is, because Sometimes when we say, get up, you have to practice this, you have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you should have a ice cold bath in the winter, and you have to, stand upside down and chant. Then many people will sign up because they feel like they're doing something. If I tell them that, you can just chant this whenever you want. You can chant it when you're driving your car. You can chant it when we tell people the greatness of Bhagavan Nama, and we say, please chant this Maha Mantra at least 3 times or at least 11 times per day. Some of them come and tell me, see, I actually chant a lot of shlokas, I do everything, but I don't have time, for chanting this. If I add on this, then I won't have time for doing other things. I always tell them, I'll find the time for you. Because this is so beautiful. And we tell them that, there are a few times in our day when we can't do anything else, we don't do anything else. And I spotted a few like that for my friends who don't have time for chanting Bhagavan Nama. He said, as soon as we get up, we wake up, we don't get up from the bed immediately. Most of them don't. After they wake up, they'll be rolling on the bed for some time. And we generally say, when you're rolling on your bed like that, chant 3 times at that time, that is enough. But if you can't remember as soon as you wake up, like that, then when you're brushing our teeth, very good time. We don't do anything else, so when we brush our teeth, we can mentally chant this Bhagavan Nama. But even that has a catch, because these days, people having gadgets and all that, so even when they brush their teeth, they'll be looking at the cell phone. And WhatsApp and Facebook and whatnot. So even they don't have time at that time. Then I find this time. Then we are having our bath. Thankfully, people are worried that, their smartphone will not work if it drops in water. So they keep it out, and there is nothing else to distract us. So when we are in the bath, 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever, we can chant Bhagavan Nama then. That is enough. Bhagavatam says, if you chant Bhagavan Nama even casually, that's enough. Sanketyam parihasyam va stomam hedanam eva vaikuntha nama grahanam ashesha agaharam vidu. Sanketyam. You don't call Bhagavan, but like I said in the beginning, you call one of your friends, hey Krishna, come here. When you do that, whether we realize or not, Bhagavan out there in Vaikuntha, he will turn to look at us, it seems. And Lakshmi Devi, when she is massaging his feet, if he turns like that, she'll give a little stress. And she'll look at him and he'll say, why are you even turning back? He's not calling you. And Bhagavan will say, what? I know he is not calling me. I also know he will never call me. If I wait for him to call me, I cannot shower my grace on him. But that name belongs to me. Bhagavan has that abhiman. See, when I go out, this place is new to me. If there is a mother who has a child called Purnima, and she calls, hey Purnima, I don't recognize the voice. I don't know anybody here. But she calls Purnima, I'm going to turn back. Swamiji would say, not many of us will understand Tamil here, but just to make it, Namma alpa manusha, nammakke namma perla abhimana irukku, he will say, we are mere human beings, and we have such attachment for our name, and this name is not our name, it is given to us. Right? It's like someone kept this name, but Narayana, Keshava, Madhava, those names actually belong originally to Bhagavan. So how the ownership is there for him, right? So whenever someone calls that name anywhere, Bhagavan turns to look at it. And Bhagavatam says you call Sanketyam, Parihasyam. Again, in some parts of India, we have this practice, in southern India I'm sure it's there, I don't know about northern part of India. If there's a loss in business, right? If someone loses a game, or if you lose your job, something like that negative happens. You know what people will say? Hey, what? Govinda va? When you say Govinda va, which means it's all gone. Bhagavan Nama, Govinda is used like that. So Bhagavan says it's okay. At least like that you're chanting my name. I'm okay even with that. And Swamiji would say people who know English, they're all safe. Because in this iron age, the fast food age, people are all, everything happens in fast forward, right? And Swamiji says, everyone will say, hurry up. And you're chanting Hari Hari. Bhagavan is not bothered about the spelling of it. As long as the sound is Hari. And I'm not making this up. Really, Bhagavatam says this. It says, chant that Bhagavan Nama, whatever. In Tamil Nadu, there are people who sell kerosene on the streets. And you know how they call out? They say, Krishna. And Swami will say, no, that guy is going to go to moksha, whether he wants or not. Because he's saying Krishna so many times a day. That becomes Nama Sankirtana. Bhagavatam says this to show that is how simple but very powerful Bhagavan Nama is. Because Bhagavan Nama is like fire. It's like medicine, like Aushadha. There's a little lamp, if you're lighting a little lamp. Say a 1 year, 1.5 year child, old child, comes up there and when nobody is noticing, he touches the flame. Will the flame think, oh, this child did not know I will burn, let me not burn it? No. The child touches, knowingly or unknowingly, you are walking and a sari touches the flame, it will catch fire. You touch fire knowingly, unknowingly. Some people come and say, fire will burn, I don't believe it. You believe it or don't believe it, whether you have faith in it or not, it's going to burn you if you touch it. Right? Just like the fire does not need your faith, just like the fire does not need your believing it, just like it does not need you to knowingly do it or unknowingly do it, but it burns us all the same. Bhagavan Nama, whether we chant knowingly or unknowingly or with faith or without faith, however we do it, it has the power to completely purify our mind and take us to the lotus feet of Bhagavan. That's the greatness of it. And all the Mahatmas' charitra, whatever their life is, finally it comes to this, where they show us that it's only Bhagavan Nama that can lead us to Bhagavan. So that is the message from Tulsidas Ji's charitra also. That there are many incidents, I didn't take the time to tell all the incidents, I just spoke about how he was introduced, so that we realize, those of us here who know this Nama, we know Bhagavan Nama, and we have been chanting so many shlokas, and we have been chanting so many things. We are all spiritual, we are all religious in some part, in some way or the other. But sometimes what we don't realize is how simple it actually is to communicate to Bhagavan and how powerful this Bhagavan Nama is. So, with that message and with the request to those of us here who are already chanting, I'm sure, I know you're all doing whatever you generally do. And I only request, add on, just add on this Maha Mantra, this Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. I say this specifically because this particular Nama comes in an Upanishad called Kali Santarana Upanishad. As the word suggests, it's specifically for the Kali Yuga. And all the divine names of Bhagavan are equally powerful. You can chant Rama Rama, Shiva Shiva, Durga Devi's Nama, you can chant any Nama. But we generally say this Nama because this is spoken in Upanishad as the most effective and powerful Nama for Kali Yuga, one point. And the other is, this is the only Nama which is also a mantra, and the only mantra which has no rules. See, mantras always have rule. Now I won't take any questions on this, but I'm just giving a general scriptural idea here. We cannot chant mantras as and when we please. If we say that, I do it with bhakti, Bhagavan knows, it doesn't work like that. When it comes to mantras, Bhagavan sees the rules. And even if you do it with love and all that, you don't follow the rules, it's not going to work. But Bhagavan Nama is not like that. It has no rules. Maha Mantra is a mantra. It's the only mantra which has no rules. Why? Because Vedas themselves say so. That this mantra alone can be chanted by anybody, any time, anywhere. Middle of the night you can wake up, and if you feel you're not sleeping, chant this Nama, you'll sleep instantly. When you start chanting Bhagavan Nama, people will have a tendency to sleep off easily. So we can do it anytime, anywhere. That's it. And the third reason is, every mantra has an associated deity with it. If you chant Vasudeva mantra, you have to think of Krishna. If you chant a Rama mantra, you have to meditate upon Rama. If you are doing a Shiva mantra, you have to be worshipping only Shiva. If you are doing a Devi mantra, you have to be thinking of Devi. But if you chant Maha mantra, this Hare Rama Maha mantra, you can meditate on your Ishta Devata. That is, that's very unique about this mantra. Like if your deity is only Ganapati, you can think of Ganapati, you can worship Ganapati and chant this Nama and do it. It will give the same pala, it will give a better pala, that's how powerful it is, and only Hare Rama has that rule, no other mantra has that. So that's the reason why we can talk about it to a common crowd, because each of us here will have a different deity, each of us will have a different liking, And in spite of all that, we can all chant this Nama together. That's the beauty of it. And so with that request, that with whatever we are doing, let's please, if you can chant this Nama maybe just 11 times a day. Like I said, it will take only 1 minute. And if you cannot schedule it during your puja time or during your other things, you can always do it during your bath time or sleep time or brushing time that we don't think belongs to Bhagavan, right? But every moment can be made belonging to Bhagavan if we can chant Bhagavan Nama like that. So with that note and thanking our Hindu Mandir here for giving us an opportunity and a stage for talking about Bhagavan and his divine names and the character of Tulsidas ji, and thanking all of you for being here on a Sunday morning. See, Goswami ji always says in the very beginning, which I actually quote this in the beginning of any lecture, Vinu Satsanga Vivekana Hoi, Rama Kripa Bhinu Sulabhana Sui. It says without Rama Kripa, we don't get Satsanga. So, we have all been chosen by Bhagavan to be here today to listen about him. And on a Sunday morning, as early as this, to be here is itself a proof that Bhagavan loves us so much. So thanking all of you and again the Mandir and thanking Bhagavan and our Guru Maharaj for bringing us together for the satsang, and with a prayer at his lotus feet that may he bless us with more and more satsangs, and with a special prayer that may he bless us with a taste for chanting the divine names of Bhagavan. Kayena vacha manasendriyeva buddhyatmana va prakrite svabhavat karomi yatyat sakalam parasmai Shriman Narayana eti samarpayami Gopika